Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome back. Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, great. Let's start then. So what are the issues related to inclusive growth? What are things to remember whenever you basically say or talk about inclusive growth? One, growth as well as development. Growth as well as development, both of them can be achieved together. You do not have to target only development. You do not have to target only growth. Why I'm talking about this? Earlier, that is when this idea of inclusive growth became very famous. Earlier, the argument was you can achieve only growth. You cannot achieve right development along with that. Some people were basically talking, okay, you can achieve development, but you cannot achieve the growth. So the World Bank simply says that don't worry. If you promote growth, and ensure that there is a redistribution in the economy. Redistribution in the sense, let's say you promote growth, you also protect farmers' income. You promote growth, you also ensure employment is generated. You promote growth and you also ensure that the people who are poor are taken care of, which means you can achieve growth as well as a development. So both growth and development can be achieved together. You do not have to target both of them individually. That is not required. That is the first point. Point number two, the number of poor must be reduced. And have a look at this, both in percentage as well as in absolute terms. And the quality of life must improve for this population. What do you mean by this? Let's take a simple example. Right, imagine 100 people are there, and 10 out of the 100 people are poor. All of you will agree? 100 people are there, 10 of them are poor. And in terms of percentage, can I call this as a 10% of the population? Let me know if you disagree. I'm using CSAT calculations now. Simple numbers. Total population is 100, 10 people are poor, which means 10% of the population is poor. Now, what if the population increases to, let's say, 150? Population increases to 150. The percentage of poverty might come down. For example, from, right, let's say 10 people, right, let's say 10 people are poor. Now it could be, let's say, right, I'll write a simple number, arbitrary number here, 120 people are poor. I'm sorry, 12 people, not 120 people, 12 people are poor. So in terms of percentage, how many percentage or how much percentage of the population is poor now? 8% of the population is poor. Correct? Any difficulty? Or am I calculating it correctly or not? Yes, 8% is correct. 8% of the population is poor. But please understand, what has happened to the number of poor? What has happened to the number of poor? Right, so the number of poor over a period of time in the country has increased. So whenever you talk about inclusive growth, you'll have to reduce the percentage of poor people. You'll also have to ensure that number of poor people are also reduced. Any difficulty in understanding second statement, let me know. It's not just that you'll have to reduce the percentage, you'll also have to reduce the number of poor people. In this example, percentage poverty has come down. Is it okay? Percentage of poor people has come down. But if you look at how many people are poor, actually the number of people who are poor has actually increased over a period of time. So the argument is, it's not just the percentage of the poverty, or it is not just the percentage of poor people, it should be reduction in the number of poor people. And also the quality of the poor people. Quality means what? Lifestyle. And again, when I say lifestyle, do not imagine rich people. Standard of living. They should be able to get access to, let's say, quality education. They should be able to get access to nutritious food. They should be able to get access to drinking water, etc., etc. You must ensure that the standard of living of this population will improve. That's a point number two. Point number three, in case of India, we have seen that the reforms have been implemented. right? It's not just very recently, but since independence, many reforms have been implemented by the government, right? In 1950s we have implemented, 1980s we have implemented, 1991 we have implemented. Even now we are in the process of implementing reforms. And whenever you implement reforms, am I audible or not? Two of you are saying I'm not audible. Am I audible to all of you? Others? Done. Those who are saying I'm not audible, please click on the button fix audio. There's a button called as fix audio. Press on it. Automatically it will start. Okay, so benefits of these reforms have not reached every section of the society. Right? The benefits of these reforms, that is in simple terms, let's say employment has been generated, income has increased, etc. The benefits of these reforms have not reached to all the sections of the society. We need to ensure that these benefits will also start reaching to the sections of the society. Social infrastructure development has been neglected in India. For example, schooling infrastructure, right? Or let's say healthcare infrastructure, right? Or for that matter, let's say rural infrastructure generally has been neglected. I'm not saying no development has taken place here. The required infrastructure is much higher, but how much we are able to provide, how much we have developed is much, much lower. For example, let me know, don't you think the amount of school infrastructure, the demand for the school infrastructure in rural India is much, much higher compared to how much is there today? The amount of healthcare infrastructure that is demanded in rural part of India is much higher compared to what it is today, right? So generally, historically it has happened. We have developed, but the demand we are not able to meet. So what we need to do is, if you want to promote growth and development, you want to address poverty in rural part of India, we need to ensure that, right, the social infrastructure is actually developed. And we need to promote investment in the technology, right? Again and again we have discussed this. We need to invest in research and development. We need to develop better technologies within the market of India. Rather than importing lot of these technologies, we should be able to develop these technologies. We must invest in research and development, provide better inputs to the agriculture sector, etc. Or in the healthcare sector, in other type of technology, we should be investing and developing the technologies in India rather than importing them. So these are some of the issues that you need to focus on whenever you discuss the concept of inclusive growth. Now, what reforms have been implemented by the government? What reforms have been implemented by the government? Point one is not clear. My dear, I told you earlier, the argument was you cannot achieve both growth and development together. For example, think of capitalism. Just think of capitalism. Can you achieve both of them together under capitalism? I hope you understand it. Right? Can you achieve both growth and development in capitalism? No. In socialism, both are possible. Again, no. Right? So overall, earlier thinking has been that if you focus on development, you will not be able to achieve growth. If you focus on the growth, achieve growth, you will not be able to achieve development. But what World Bank says is both are connected to each other. Both are not individually achievable. Both are connected to each other. If you promote growth, ensure certain aspects in the economy. For example, protection of farmers, right? Pollution control, right? Ensure that credit is available to MSMEs, etc., etc., etc. Right? We will be able to achieve both the growth as well as development. Okay. Now, what are the reforms which have been implemented by the government? Okay, what are the reforms which are implemented by the government to promote inclusive growth? One, in order to address poverty, right? And please understand, this is a gist of it. This is not an exclusive list. You can keep on writing multiple schemes. It's not an exclusive list. Just to give you an idea, many reforms which are implemented by the government to address point A, point B, point C, point D like that, I've given you a list of reforms. For example, in order to address poverty, government has implemented Annapurna scheme. Can you write NFSA here? Of course, yes. National Food Security Act. Can you write Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana? Again, yes. In addition to this, Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, wherein 100 days of wages, 100 days of work is provided to at least one person in every household in the village. Right? Manrega has been implemented. What about employment generation? What about promotion of employment? Skilling initiatives have been implemented by the government. Some time ago, we have discussed this. Right? For example, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, National Apprentices Scheme. Even, right, melas are conducted by the government. Right? Employment, Rozgar, melas now are being conducted by the government. Right? So, promotion of employment, of course, yes. In addition to this, in addition to, let's say, Skill India, PMKVY, NAPS, Rozgar Melas, etc., you can write many more. For example, PLI, Production Linked Incentive. You tell me, don't you think one of the objectives of Production Linked Incentive is to promote employment or not? I hope you understand. One of the objectives of PLI is to promote employment generation. What about special economic zones? Employment generation. What about Make in India? Employment generation. So again, the argument is simple. Again, I'm repeating. Many of you are telling, sir, can I put this here? Can I add it here? This is just an illustrative list. It's not an exhaustive list. I hope you understand. It is just an illustration, not an exhaustive list. You can keep on adding multiple reforms. Promotion of industries. Right? Promotion of industries. Make in India. Startup India. Production linked incentive scheme, etc. What about promotion of financial inclusion? You can write Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. Right? There are so many. Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Yojana. Right? There are so many initiatives of the government which will promote financial inclusion. What about protection of the environment? I have not written anything here, but can you write multiple reforms of the government under the protection of environment? Of course, yes. Net zero emission by 2070. Net zero emission by 2070. Government of India's policy. 500 gigawatts. 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. Net zero emission in railways, etc. Or promotion of electric vehicles. Right? So all these are nothing but the reforms which have been undertaken by the government to protect the environment itself. Development of villages. Development of the rural part of India, that is villages. For example, Government of India has implemented aspirational districts. Under Niti Aayog, there is an initiative called as aspirational districts. 112 districts have been identified, and we are developing all of these 112 districts as aspirational districts. What are we doing in the aspirational districts? We are identifying certain loopholes in the sense gaps in the infrastructure, and we are trying to provide all of these infrastructure in these districts, aspirational districts. What about BharatNet? High-speed broadband connectivity. Simple, BharatNet is providing high-speed broadband connectivity. We are providing high-speed broadband connectivity, right, to identified lakhs of panchayats in India. And what is the objective? By providing broadband connection, access to internet will improve, flow of the knowledge will improve. The people who are living in rural parts of India now will be able to get access to a lot of information. For example, a farmer now will be able to get access to a lot of information related to agriculture sector. Right? Let's say telemedicine will be promoted, etc., etc. So argument is simple here. Again, I'll reiterate my point. These are some of the reforms that you can simply say have been implemented by the government to promote inclusive growth. But are these the only reforms? That will be wrong. Right? Rather than putting all the reforms, which is basically clustering everything, which is much more confusing for you people, etc., etc. I've given you examples under each one of them. Done? So this is what the government of India has been doing in order to promote inclusive growth in India. So let me go to the next one now. The last concept for all of you, International Monetary Fund, IMF, International Monetary Fund. Any difficulty? Any difficulty? Let me know. Any difficulty regarding what we have discussed under inclusive growth? Do not complicate it. And that's the reason, understand this carefully. Inclusive growth, is it okay? I'll put a one statement now. I'll put a one statement. Inclusive growth basically is a summation of what you have discussed in the last 5 weekends. Let me see how many of you will understand what I'm saying. Inclusive growth basically is a summation of what you have discussed in the last 5 weeks. For example, you discussed GDP, you discussed agriculture, you discussed industries, banking, subsidies, and don't you think, right? Don't you think what you have discussed, all of these chapters individually, all of them are connected to inclusive growth? Now, let me ask you a question. Do you need to develop infrastructure to achieve inclusive growth? Think of it and answer. Right? And answer. And I'm asking this for a very specific reason. This was the question asked in UPSC mains. This was the question asked in UPSC mains. Do you need to promote or do you need to ensure that infrastructure will be developed to achieve inclusive growth? Of course, yes. Can I connect it to current affairs? Can I connect it to current affairs? Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, one infrastructure project. Can we use this infrastructure project to promote inclusive growth? Answer is yes. Answer is yes. That's the reason I tell you, please read about it. Sir, how? Is there any difficulty in understanding that this project will promote growth? Anybody has a problem? First point. This project will promote growth. Any difficulty here? No. Right? Again, if anybody has a problem, let me know. Let me know. I'll address it. Second, one of the advantages of this project, as per the government, I'm going by the government document itself. Even the Minister for Roadways told this in the speech. The roadways crosses through some of the tribal regions. Is it okay? The roadways, or that is the expressway, is crossing in some of the tribal regions. And what the government now says is, in nearby these villages, they'll be setting up something called as rural hath. Rural hath. Rural haths. Right? What is this rural hath? Simple. It is a shop. It is nothing but a shop. Simple. It is nothing but a shop. Now, where these shops will be constructed or developed, it's a marketing point in simple terms. Where people living in these villages or these tribal groups, now they may bring their products and market it and sell it to the people. Right? So don't you think, one, investment is going to increase, and anyways higher investment means multiplier effect, employment is getting generated, etc., etc. We are also ensuring that the villages which are there along the way like this, they will also be able to sell their products in the rural huts, thereby ensuring a marketing point for all of them. Right? So that's the reason, again and again, I'll keep on telling you, inclusive growth, it's a very wide concept. It's a very, very big concept. You cannot simply restrict it to point 1, point 2, point 3 like this. Whatever you have discussed in the past 5 weeks, you can either directly or indirectly have a connection of all of that with inclusive growth. Or the best example in inclusive growth, today itself we have discussed Sagarmala initiative. Let me know. Sagarmala initiative. One of the objectives under Sagarmala initiative is what? Coastal community development. Coastal community development. Right? We are going to ensure that people living, that is the areas in the coastal region, they will have a benefit of growth in the economics. That is, fishing harbors will be developed. Right? Tourism projects will be developed. Don't you think people who are living in these areas now will be able to get the benefit of the growth? Of course, yes. So that's a reason, right? In the beginning also I told you this. Inclusive growth we'll discuss in the last class, and whatever you discuss, all of them will be connected to inclusive growth. Done? Okay. Now the last concept for you people. International Monetary Fund. IMF. Now before I start, IMF is not a very small concept. It's not a very small idea per se. If you go to the IMF website, there are so many documents, there's so much of information that is given on IMF. Should you read all of it for civil services? My answer to you people, absolutely no. Do not waste your time. People have done PhD thesis on structure of IMF. Should you do that? No, not at all required. If your goal is civil services, don't do PhD. Then what is required? Point number one. Whatever are certain important basic points related to IMF, read that. Point number two. If IMF is there in the newspaper here and there, read about it. I'll give you a very prime example. IMF very recently was there in the newspaper in connection with Pakistan. Correct or wrong? IMF is there in the newspaper in connection to Sri Lanka. And this is not new. Nothing new. From last 1.5 years, in relation to both of these countries, IMF is there. And please check last year's question paper. Civil services prelims, by the way. Please check last year's question paper. UPSC had picked up a question directly from one of the tools used by IMF as the question in the civil services prelims. And those kind of questions, whenever they ask you, they will not frame a very, very difficult question. For example, in some time I'll discuss certain loans which are given by IMF. Loans which are given by IMF. Now, please understand this. There are more than 10 types of loan products which are there with IMF. I'm trying to tell you the difficulty. Understand this. Many of you will focus and waste your time. There are more than 10 types of loan products given by IMF. And in all these 10 times, duration changes. Now you tell me, should you remember all the 10 loans along with the details of the loans? Just apply common sense, you will understand. Because it's very difficult to remember. Very, very difficult to remember. Now don't take it as a challenge. Don't take it as a challenge and say, how dare you question my capacity? I will sit 2 weeks and buy out everything. Great. Already a question on loan has been asked in the last year prelims. You're simply focusing on the unrelevant or non-relevant things for civil services. So focus on what is needed. Do not worry about the rest of the things. Focus on what is required. So with this caveat, let me start. So International Monetary Fund, what is the origin? Origin is simple. There is a city, right? Many of you will ask me, sir, what is this meaning of the Bretton Woods? Simple. In USA, there is a city. The name of the city is Bretton Woods. Right? I hope you understand this. Don't be bogged down. Don't be confused about the term Bretton Woods. What does it mean? There is a city in the USA. The name of the city is Bretton Woods. Why are we calling this as a Bretton Woods institutions? Simple. 1944, the member countries or the various countries came together. They discussed and they decided, let's have 2 institutions. Of course, they proposed 3. I hope you remember the story that I told you when I was discussing WTO. They proposed 3, but they did not establish all the 3. They established only 2. And because we decided only 2 institutions, look at the name. Bretton Woods twins. What are the two twins? One, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the second one is World Bank. And the other name for this is also UN Monetary and Financial Conference. Right? A conference was conducted in the Bretton Woods, and the result of that was two institutions. Point number one. Point number two. The IMF has 190 members, and the headquarters of IMF, it is present in the Washington, DC. Let me ask you a question. Let me see how many of you remember. Where is the headquarters of WTO? I've covered WTO, by the way. Don't tell me, sir, I have not covered WTO. I've covered WTO. So I'm asking a question now. Where is the headquarters of World Trade Organization? It is in Geneva, Switzerland. Geneva, Switzerland. Done. Some of you have answered. Great. I'm happy. Now, what are the functions of IMF? First one, it will provide loans to member countries. Anybody has a problem with this? So, any example of loans? India has taken a loan in the past. But post 1993, we have not taken any loans from IMF. IMF is negotiating a loan with Pakistan. IMF is negotiating a loan, right, with the Sri Lanka. Right, so it will provide loans to member countries. But specifically understand this, where does IMF provide loans? Right, because the World Bank will also provide loans. IMF is also providing loans. Where does both of them provide loans? Simple. World Bank will provide loans for infrastructure development, promotion of growth, promotion of development. For those kind of loans, World Bank will give loans. Right? Whereas if you talk about IMF, International Monetary Fund, IMF will come into picture whenever there is a crisis associated with BOP. There is a problem of BOP with a country. That is where IMF generally comes into picture. Now you can look at the current affairs, you will understand it. Look at the current affairs, automatically you will understand it. Right? Don't you think Pakistan is facing a BOP crisis? Sri Lanka is facing a BOP crisis. Of course, that is why IMF has come to both of their rescue. Right? So provide loans to member countries. Second, monetary policies of the government. Very important. They will monitor the policies of the government. Why? The policies of the government can affect the exchange rate. Simple. The policies of the government will have a huge impact on the exchange rate. It will have a huge impact on BOP. It will have a huge impact on what is the value of investment coming in, going out. That's the reason, right? Basically, the IMF will also study the policies of the government and keep on giving certain inputs to the government. I'll connect it to current affairs so that you understand it. Right now, the Prime Minister of Britain, not British, Britain, Mr. Rishi Sunak. Before Mr. Rishi Sunak, there was one more Prime Minister. The earlier Prime Minister introduced certain policies. The IMF said, if you introduce these policies, the work of the central bank will be affected. Is it okay? Right? The earlier Prime Minister, before Mr. Rishi Sunak, again, don't worry, don't read about that Prime Minister, not relevant now. Not at all relevant. The earlier Prime Minister introduced certain policies. The IMF said, you are basically interfering in the working of central bank. Your policies are affecting what the central bank is doing. So that is monitoring the policies and giving recommendations. Give recommendations to member countries regarding their policies. It will also publish multiple reports. Please by heart the names of the report. Do not read what is there in which report. UPSC generally doesn't ask it. They will not ask it. What they will generally have asked so far is this report is published by whom? Or this authority will publish which of the following reports? Right, so it will publish reports titled World Economic Outlook, Global Financial Stability Report, Fiscal Monitor, Regional Economic Outlook. These are the reports which are published by International Monetary Fund. Now, what is the structure of IMF? Before I start, here is a very important point. In many of the books, even in the Google, they have given a very complicated structure. You don't trust me? After the class is over, do me a favor. Go to the Google and type structure of IMF and go to images. You will see such a very complicated structure of IMF, you will start having a headache. Do you need to remember that structure? Absolutely no. Please don't by heart that structure. It is very complicated. What is required? What is required for civil services? A very simplified structure. Let me show it to you. The most important authority within IMF, the highest decision-making authority of IMF is a board of governors. I repeat, the highest decision-making authority under IMF, it is the board of governors. And who is the member of board of governors? The member countries are part of board of governors. Member countries. And from every country, please understand, that is, whoever is a part of board of governors, from every country, 2 representatives will be there. 2 in the sense, one is referred to as the governor and the second is referred to as alternative governor. Is it okay? Right? I hope you understand. The highest decision-making authority within the IMF, and I'll tell you what kind of decisions they take. Just give me 2 minutes. It is the board of governors. And the member countries are represented in the board of governors. But within the board of governors, let's say from India, there are 2 people. One is referred to as the governor, second person is referred to as alternative governor or alternate governor. The finance minister is the governor, the RBI governor is the alternate governor. Is it okay? Right? I hope you understand this. From India, the 2 people who are present within the IMF, one is the finance minister by default. Whoever is the finance minister becomes the governor. And whoever is the RBI governor becomes the alternative governor. Now, what is the role of the board of governors? What is the role? Have a look at this. Most of the important decision making of IMF, important decision making, it is done by board of governors. For example, approve quota increases. What is quota? I have not discussed. I'll come to that. Have patience. If a quota has to be changed for the member countries, it is decided by BOG, Board of Governors. Provide special drawing rights, not yet discussed. I will discuss, have patience. So changes in the quota, allocations of special drawing rights. If you want to admit a new member country, if you want to remove a member country, if you want to change any of the articles which have led to establishment of IMF, if you want to change anything related to IMF, first you will have to change articles of agreement. If you want to change articles of agreement, it has to be done only by the Board of Governors. But frankly speaking, Board of Governors cannot take care of day-to-day activities. I hope you understand. Finance Minister cannot go to IMF every day and have a discussion on day-to-day basis. And the same can be applied even to RBI Governor. They cannot keep on participating on everyday basis in the IMF work. So that's the reason, apart from the Board of Governors, what they've done is, whenever you talk about day-to-day activities of IMF, they have delegated this work to one more authority within the IMF, which is called as Executive Board. Is it okay? Right? There is one more authority which is within the IMF. It is Executive Board. And in the Executive Board, region-wise, members will be represented. These are called as 24 members. From India, one member will be present here. Now, what are the functions of an executive board? What do they do? Right, have a look at this. It is the executive board which will discuss all the aspects of day-to-day activities of the fund, that is International Monetary Fund, such as annual health checks of member countries. And when I say health checks, we are not talking about literal health. I hope you understand. We are not talking about literally the health. We are talking about financial status of the countries, BOP of the countries, exchange rate of the countries, etc. Their policies, whether their policies are affecting, right, the stability of the BOP. Is it affecting other countries? Right, for example, I'll ask a very simple question. If China starts to devalue their currency, is it good for the global economy? I'll repeat the statement so that you understand what I'm saying. If China starts to devalue their currency, continuously they will devalue their currency, today, day after tomorrow, again Tuesday, Wednesday, is it good for the global economy? Your answer should be absolutely no. It is not good for the global economy. Why? There is a globalization now. China is not an individual country in terms of trade. There is an integration of trade. If China will devalue their currency, USA market would be affected. Indian market would be affected. So argument is there has to be one authority which will take care of these kind of impact of the policies on the other countries. That is the role of the executive board. So we have executive board, but executive board will derive its powers. It doesn't have any individual powers. Whatever powers are given to the executive board, it will come from the board of governors. Okay. So this is the board of governors. This is executive board. But the board of governors will be given recommendations, advice by two more committees. Have a look at this. The board of governors is given the recommendation by two more committees. One is called as a development committee. Second one is called as International Monetary and Financial Committee, IMFC and DC, that is a development committee. In IMFC, 24 members are there. In development committee, 25 members are there. And please understand this, whenever these kind of committees are established, global organizations such as World Bank, right, or other global organizations, by default, they are allowed to participate. They will be allowed to act as participants because these are global organizations. Of course, they should be allowed to, right, act as participants in these kind of committees. This is the list of 24 members. This is a list of 25 members. Should you remember? No. Do not waste your time. Please do not waste your time. Don't again start reading about IMFC, DC. You can have a look at everything. You can spend 10 hours on IMFC, another 20 hours on DC. Not relevant for civil services. Do not waste your time. Simply look at it. Is India a member? Yes. In IMFC, India is a member. In development committee, again, India is a member. Okay. So the IMFC as well as the DC will keep on regularly giving inputs, advice to the board of governors, and board of governors, right, based on the advice, will keep on taking lot of important decisions. Right. This is a structure of International Monetary Fund. And if you ask me, rather than remembering that convoluted structure, very, very complicated structure, remember this structure, it is more than sufficient for civil services. More than sufficient. Don't buy at that complicated structure. That's very, very complicated. Now, let's come to IMF. Okay, let's come to IMF. Now, have a look at this. What is the role of IMF? One of the very important roles of IMF. IMF, I said, will provide loans to member countries. Do you remember? One of the very important functions of IMF is they will provide loans to member countries. But now the question arises. From where will the IMF get money? Because IMF is not a company which is selling goods and getting money. No. IMF is not opening bank accounts, right? That is, we are not opening bank accounts and depositing money with IMF. That is also not there. So from where does IMF gets the money? Follow this very carefully. Once you understand, all of this becomes very easy. IMF will get the money in 3 different ways. I repeat, IMF will get the money in 3 different ways. First one is called as quota. First one is referred to as quota. Second one is referred to as multilateral borrowing. I'll come to that. In fact, multilateral borrowing, the actual tool, the name of the tool is NAB. Do not worry about the long form. Next slide, it is there. Have patience. Right, so second tool is NAB. And the third tool is bilateral borrowing. Bilateral borrowing. So is it okay? Let me know. I'll repeat it again. IMF will provide loans. But to provide the loans, IMF should have money first. From where does IMF will get the money? 3 different ways. One is quota. I'll discuss it now. Second one is NAB, new arrangements to borrow. Have a look at this. New arrangements to borrow. Third one is bilateral borrowing agreements. Now, why 3 ways? Why 3 different ways? Simple. Generally, IMF says, if I have the requirement and the amount that I've collected, I repeat, the amount that I've collected through quota, if that is sufficient, if that amount is sufficient, I'll give you simple numbers so that you understand it. Simple numbers. Imagine IMF wants to lend 100 crore rupees. IMF wants to provide loans of how much? 100 crore rupees. Now through quota, imagine IMF already has collected 150 crore. Right? I'll tell you what is quota, how much is given, etc. I'll tell you. Have patience. Through quota, IMF has already collected 150 crore. Now, is it okay if I say, because IMF already has sufficient amount of money to provide loans, NAB and bilateral borrowing will not be required? Any difficulty, please do let me know. IMF wants to give loans worth 100 crore, but it already has 150 crore rupees. Will IMF require NAB? Absolutely no. Will IMF require bilateral borrowing? Again, no. There is no requirement because the funds are already sufficient. But please understand what IMF says is, many of the times, crisis will happen in the economy. Crisis will take place in the economy. Now, for example, let me give you a glimpse of it. Sri Lanka needs loans. Already imagine 100 crore loans have been provided. Sri Lanka requires loan. Pakistan requires loan. And let's say hypothetically, take simple numbers so that you understand it. Hypothetically, both Sri Lanka and Pakistan, if they require 100 crore rupees now, for both of them, IMF wants to provide 100 crore rupee loan. Now, do you think IMF has sufficient money? Just look at the numbers. Right? Just look at the numbers. 100 crore already has been provided. 100 crore already given. IMF has how much? 150 crore. But now, IMF wants to give 100 crore rupees more to both Sri Lanka as well as Pakistan. Do you think IMF has sufficient money now? Absolutely no. They are falling short. In this case, what they will do is, they will use NAB. Right? I hope you understand. They will use NAB. What is NAB? I'll tell you. Just give me 2 minutes. Let's say hypothetically, I'll take simple numbers. Let's say hypothetically, NAB 100 crore rupees. So already 150 crore was there. Under NAB, IMF will get 100 crore rupees. So now how much money is there with IMF? 250 crore rupees. So 100 crore already given. Another 100 crore to Sri Lanka and Pakistan. So total loans given will be how much now? 200 crore worth of loans are given. Now let's say hypothetically, after one more year, further crisis will take place. Let's say crisis will happen in one more country. And now IMF wants to provide 70 crore rupees loan to one more country. Is the logic okay? Right? There is a crisis in one more country, or let's say Sri Lanka and Pakistan crisis further deepen. IMF wants to provide loans. So what IMF will do? Imagine they want 70 crore rupees more. Do they have 70 crores? Right? Do they have 70 crore rupees? Again, no. They have how much? They have collected totally 250. They already have given 200. They only have 50 crore rupee loans, or they have only 50 crore, but they want to give 70 crore. Now what they will do is, they will use the third tool. They will use the third tool that is called as bilateral borrowing. Is it okay? They will use the third tool which is called as bilateral borrowing arrangement. I hope you understand how IMF will get the funds, how they will give the loans. What kind of loans they will give? I will give you the list. Have patience. But is the logic okay? First, they will use quota, because quota, I'll come to this now. Quota anyways is there with IMF. That money is anyways there with IMF. But if there is more funds requirement, they will take it under NAB. Now, if they require more funds after NAB, they will take it under bilateral borrowing. Right? This is the priority. Please remember, this is the priority. That is the reason. Have a look at this. That is the reason they will say, right? They will say multilateral borrowing is a line of defense. Line of defense. First, they will use quota. If they exhaust the amount, they will use right NAB, new agreements to borrow. If they further require funds, they will go to the next one, that is bilateral borrowing arrangement. This is the sequence. Always remember, this is the sequence. So total amount of money they will be able to generate. Total amount of money they will be able to get using all the three tools will be how much? Around $977 billion. And that is the precise reason. If UPSC will ask you, what is the total value of loans that could be provided by IMF? Right? IMF website will tell you it is approximately 1 trillion. Is it okay? It is approximately 1 trillion. Up to $1 trillion worth of loans can be provided by International Monetary Fund. Shall I go to the next one? Here? This is how IMF will collect and give loan. Now let's enter into all the three. What is relevant information? Let's focus on that. First one, quota. What is the quota? IMF says quota is nothing but building block of IMF. Quota is nothing but it's a building block of IMF. Sir, what is a building block? Simple. Imagine there is a country A, they want to become a member of IMF. There's one country, right? A, they want to apply and become a member of IMF. What IMF says is, you will have to pay certain amount of money. Has India paid it? Yes. Has USA paid it? Yes. Every country, whichever is the member of IMF, already has paid certain amount of money to IMF. This amount of money which is collected by IMF before a country becomes a member, it is called as quota. Any difficulty, please do let me know. Right? All these countries which are becoming a member, they will have to pay certain amount of money. That amount of money is referred to as quota. Has India paid quota? Yes. USA, China, right? Let's say Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Great Britain, Germany, every country has paid quota. And again, understand this, the quota will change from one country to another country. It's not fixed. It's not fixed. It will change from one country to another country. And how does IMF will calculate the quota? There are 4 parameters. Please by heart the 4 parameters. Do not enter into details of it, because trust me, it is very, very technical. I'm only saying this. It's very technical. Do not enter into the details of it. Simply by heart it. What are the 4 parameters? GDP, openness, economic variability, and international reserves. Is it okay? These are the 4 parameters. There is a formula for it, right? They will write the formula. GDP into 0.5 plus openness into 0.3 plus economic variability into, right, 0.15, international reserves into 0.05, whole bracket into compression factor. Some of you will be looking at the screen, right, wondering as to what I'm saying. That is the formula that is used by IMF. Is it needed for you? No, it is not required. What is required is simply this. Every member country will have to pay a certain amount, right, to become a member of IMF. And IMF will decide based on a formula how much contribution has to be done by every member country. And the formula involves 4 parameters. These are growth, right, variability, that is economic variability, openness, and international reserves. And finally, right, have a look at this. Within all these factors, within all these 4 parameters, the parameter which is given the highest weight, it is a gross domestic product, GDP of a country. Okay, done. This is quota. Any difficulty here? This is quota. Again, do not by heart the formula. I am only saying that. Do not by heart the formula. UPSC will not ask you that formula. Do not enter into details how openness is calculated, how economic variability is calculated. Not at all needed. You are simply wasting your time. Right? So these are the 4 parameters. Using a formula, quota is calculated, and this country will have to make the payment to become member of IMF. That's the reason I said. That's the reason I said already IMF has collected certain amount of money, that is quota. Now is the point clear to all of you? Right? That's the reason I said IMF already has collected certain amount, that is quota. Right? Rest of the 2, that is NAB and bilateral borrowing, if it is required, they will use it. Right? In the same consequence, in the same sequence, they will use it. Quota already they have. They already have collected the money. They will use this to provide loans. Okay? Right? So this is the first source, that is quota. Second, new arrangement to borrow. And please by heart in this sequence only. Please by heart. Quota, NAB and BBA. Quota, new arrangements to borrow, and bilateral borrowing agreements. Now second, new arrangements to borrow. Now what happens in a new arrangement to borrow? There are certain number of countries who have told IMF, I'm simplifying it. There are certain number of countries who have told IMF, if you need money, we will lend it to you. Is it okay? Right, I'll repeat it. There are certain member countries within the IMF. How many countries are there? 40 countries, including India. India is part of NAB. India is a part of BBA. India is present on both the sides. Do not have a doubt. Right? So what has happened? First quota was given. Later IMF realized if there is a crisis, I would have to provide more loans. But the money that I've collected through quota will not be sufficient. So from where will I get more money? Then 40 member countries said that if you need money, we will provide it. We will provide it. How much? Right? Have a look at this. $361 billion 361 billion STR or $521 billion. I have not yet discussed STR. We will have a look at that also. Have patience. So all the 40 members have pledged. Pledge means promised. All the 40 members have promised that if IMF requires, they will provide, right? How much? $521 billion. This is called as new arrangements to borrow. But understand this. If IMF has to get this $521 billion, right? 85% of these members, 85% of these members will have to approve it. 85% of the members will have to agree, vote in favor. Right now, IMF will be allowed to get access to $521 billion. Okay, next one. 2020 borrowing agreements, bilateral borrowing agreements. IMF has used up quota. IMF has taken under the new arrangements to borrow. Even now, IMF requires money because they have to lend. They require money. So what they will do now? Right? They will activate. They will activate in the sense they will use the third option available to them, that is 2020 bilateral borrowing agreement. Under 2020 bilateral borrowing agreements, right? Have a look at this. There are 42 member countries who have collectively stated, right? 42 lenders who have collectively pledged, promised $193 billion. Right? They say if you require, all these 42 creditors will come together with 85% voting. With 85% voting, we will agree, right? We will basically pass it. And now you can get $193 billion from all these 42 creditors. Right? That is a third line of defense or another line of defense wherein IMF can borrow up to $193 billion. Any difficulty in understanding this? Any difficulty? Sir, why so many? Because originally we felt quota could be sufficient. Simple. Originally we felt quota will be sufficient. Later we realized quota is not sufficient. Then we introduced one more new arrangement to borrow. Now, even under the new arrangement to borrow, there was a crisis in the European market, very famously referred to as Eurozone crisis. Then the IMF realized even this may not be sufficient in the crisis situation. I need one more tool to borrow. And that the third tool to borrow, right, is basically bilateral borrowing agreement. Right? Maybe in the future, again there could be one more crisis where even this 1 trillion may not be sufficient for IMF. As of now, we have not come to that situation. Maybe in the future, I hope you understand, maybe in the future, there could be one more crisis where even 1 trillion will not be sufficient. Then IMF might introduce one more tool where many countries will agree, okay, we will give you so much amount of loan. Right? So the argument is simple. Initially, we started with quota, but we realized quota is not sufficient. We introduced NAB, new arrangements to borrow. And then we realized even new arrangements to borrow is not sufficient. We introduced bilateral borrowing agreements. Is it okay? Is it okay? Right? It's just like what me and you do. For example, I will earn salary. Right? If the salary is sufficient, I will not borrow from anyone. But if the salary is not sufficient, I will take loan from, let's say, my parents. But what if even that loan is not sufficient? Now I will take a loan from my friend. Just like that. Just like that, we have different arrangements like this. Okay? 85% of the total members? No, 85% of the members who are present in the group. And please understand, whenever I say 85% like this, voting right is given to every member country. Is it okay? Voting right is given to member country. Voting power is there. So 85% of the member countries. Okay. NBA and BBA both are same. No, my dear, both are not same. Value of amount pledged is different. First you will use NBA, then you will use BBA. Can you understand the differences here? Why do we make a different tool like this? First you will exhaust NBA, even then it is not sufficient, right? You need more money, only then you will activate BBA. Member countries are different. Amount pledged, promised is different, right? So both are different. Don't be confused, okay? And again, don't do a PhD on that also. You're simply, right, confusing everything. Don't do PhD. Stick to this much, more than sufficient. You don't trust me? Take last 10 years question papers. Look at the last 10 years question papers, you will only understand. Okay, let me go to the next concept. SDR, special drawing rights. The idea of special drawing right. What is a special drawing right? Special drawing right for the first time ever was introduced by IMF back in 1969. It was introduced by IMF back in 1969. It is nothing but a reserve asset. Understand my statement? It is nothing but it is a reserve asset. It's a reserve asset. And every member country of IMF is issued these SDRs. I'll repeat the statement here. Every member country of IMF is issued these reserve asset. For example, does India have a SDR? Do we have SDR? I'll show you the data. Do not by heart the data. By the way, do not by heart the data. This is as per the current economic survey. Have a look at it. Have a look at this. This is as per the current economic survey. The forex reserves, right? I hope you understand. I'm talking about a current affairs point here. UPSC can ask you this. The forex reserve of any country for that matter is having 4 components. Focus on India here. 4 components. What are the 4 components? One is the gold. Just like any central bank, even RBI has purchased a huge amount of gold. After gold, we have RTP. RTP is nothing but reserve tranche position. I have a slide on this also. Reserve tranche position. I'll come to this, don't worry. Reserve tranche position, or else it is also referred to as a gold tranche. I'll come to this, don't worry. Component number 1, gold reserves. Component number 2, reserve tranche position. Component number 3, special drawing rights. I was discussing that only. I'll go back. Don't worry. Special drawing rights. Component number 4, foreign currency assets. Basket of foreign currency asset, such as let's say dollar bonds, euro bonds, yuan, yen, pound, etc., etc. That's the reason whenever you talk about forex reserves, in fact, I told you this. I'll tell you the context. I was discussing RBI. One of the functions of RBI is what? One of the functions of RBI to maintain forex reserves in India. I had given you the list and I told you when I discuss IMF, I will discuss RTP as well as SDR. That is exactly what I'm discussing now. So if you put together RTP, SDR plus foreign currency asset plus gold, that will give you total forex reserves. That will give you total forex reserves. Right? Now, what is the forex reserves as per the latest data, that is end of the December 2022? The total forex reserves is this amount, 46,54,920 crore rupees. 46,54,920 crore rupees. Now, some of you will say, sir, but I read in the newspaper this. The reason you're finding a difference is, in the newspaper, it is given in the form of dollars. Simple. In the newspaper, you will read it in the form of dollars. $573 billion, $645 billion, etc. Here, we have simply given it in terms of rupees. Should you by heart the table? Do not waste your time. Do not by heart the table. Please do not waste your time. Right? You will take 4 to 5 months to by heart the table. UPSC will not ask anything from the table. What they will ask is this line. Right? Not even this. This one. That's it. What is relevant is only this line. That is, what are the components of the forex reserve? Gold is there, SDR is there, RTP is there, foreign currency assets are there. And if you observe it, you will realize out of all the four, highest value is always foreign currency assets. Is it okay? Right? Out of all of this, highest value is foreign currency assets. Right? FCA is the highest component. Please remember that. Can be asked in the prelims. Can be asked in the prelims. Do not be confused. It can be asked in the prelims. Done? Now come back to this. SDR. Two components I'll discuss now. One is SDR. Second one is RTP. What is this SDR? IMF will issue SDR to all the member countries. Any country which is a member of IMF will get SDR. So on what basis SDRs are distributed? Based on the quota. Right? Based on the quota, SDRs are allocated to every member. And I'm pretty sure now all of you will understand when I say this. Quotas are different. Hence, SDRs allocated to every member country will also be different. Is it okay? Right? Quotas are different. Hence, SDRs allocated will also be different. That is second point. Point number 3. What is this SDR? SDRs are reserve assets which can be used by the member countries. I repeat, SDRs are nothing but reserve assets which can be used by the member countries for payments. Sir, what kind of payment? Let's say hypothetically, right? Understand this carefully. Let's say hypothetically, you have borrowed $1 from IMF. Understand this. Simple example. You have borrowed $1 from IMF. Now you'll have to pay back this particular $1. And IMF on regular basis, generally you will see that on weekly basis, IMF will fix what is the value of 1 unit of SDR. IMF will fix what is the value of 1 unit of SDR. For example, let's say hypothetically, again hypothetically, 1 SDR is equal to $1. In fact, it will not be like this. It's not like this. Value of 1 SDR in terms of dollars, dollar value is much, much lower. But don't worry, focus on this. Let's say hypothetically, today, $1 is equal to 1 SDR. So how much money you are supposed to pay back to IMF? You are supposed to pay $1. So rather than paying $1, you can simply pay 1 SDR. You can simply give 1 SDR to IMF. Is the logic okay? I hope you understand. Sir, why will I use SDR? My dear, what if you do not have dollars? You tell me. What if you do not have dollars? Right? That is the reason every member country, whatever SDRs have been allocated, they will count it as a part of forex reserves. So that whenever there's a shortage of dollars, whenever they have to make a payment of dollars, they can simply trade SDRs. And is it that only IMF will accept SDRs? Absolutely no. Even one member country to another member country. I repeat, one member country to another member country. I cannot sell it to a company. I cannot sell it to Mr. Elon Musk. I cannot sell it to anybody else. One member country to another member country, or one member country to IMF. We can use SDRs, special drawing rights, to make, let's say, payments like this. Right? Any difficulty? And how do we determine value of 1 SDR? It is done by IMF. And in order to find the value of 1 SDR, IMF uses 5 currencies. Please remember this. In order to find one value of SDR, The IMF uses 5 currencies. Sir, why only 5 currencies? Simple. When you talk about international market, right, a lot of trading is done. Which are the currencies which are mostly used in the trading? I hope you understand. Which are the currencies which are mostly used in the international trading? I'm pretty sure all of you know that rupee is not very famous in terms of acceptance in the international market. Whereas a dollar, euro, right? You talk about Chinese yuan, right? Japanese yen, pound. These are very famous currencies, international currencies. That is a precise reason. These are the 5 currencies which are used by IMF to calculate one value of STR. And is it okay if I say that values of these currencies will keep on changing? And when values of these currencies will keep on changing, what will happen to one value of 1 unit of STR? The value of 1 unit of STR will also keep on fluctuating. Right? That is basically the idea of special drawing rights. Is the logic okay? Let me know if there is any problem. Should you by heart the calculation of 1 STR? Don't. Do not do that. Focus on the currencies. These are the 5 currencies. The most recent one which was added to the list, the most recent one which has been added to the basket is Chinese yuan. Chinese yuan. This is the most recent currency which has been added here. Right, and these are the 5 currencies. Highest weightage has been given to dollar. Second highest has been given to euro. Right, so on day-to-day basis or regular basis, the values of these currencies will change. Hence, value of 1 STR will also change. And what is the use of these STRs? These can be utilized, one, in counting of forex reserves, and second, whenever payment is supposed to be done, you are falling short of dollars, you can basically use the STRs. You can use the STRs to make payments. Done? Right, so this is one concept. One more concept, RTP, reserve tranche position. RTP, reserve tranche position. Now, what is this reserve tranche position? Follow this very carefully. Follow this very carefully. Slightly confusing. Focus on the definition first. Read the definition once. I'll explain it. Read the definition once. It is the difference between IMF holdings of a country and the designated IMF quota of the country. I repeat, read it once, then I'll give you explanation. It is the difference between IMF holding of a country and the designated IMF quota of the country. What is the meaning of it? Let me explain. Let me explain. Imagine here is a country A. They want to become a member of IMF. And IMF will use a formula at where 4 factors are used, 4 parameters: growth, economic variability, openness, and forex reserves. They will use a formula and tell the country, please pay 100 crore rupees. That is your quota. Please pay 100 crore rupees. Done? So what is the designated quota? Follow this. What is the designated quota? 100 crore rupees is the designated quota. Which means this member country should give IMF 100 crore rupees. Point 1. Point number 2. Out of this designated quota, I repeat, out of the designated quota, up to 25% can be borrowed by the member country. I will repeat it. Out of this designated quota, up to 25% can be borrowed by the member country. How much is 25% of 100 crores? 25 crore rupees. I am taking simple numbers so that you understand it. Let's say this country A, step 1 will give 100 crores to IMF. That is the designated quota. But because A requires certain loans, what they will do is they will take 25 crore rupees from IMF. Out of this 100 crore rupees, they will take back 25 crore rupees from IMF. A simple question to you. In the step 1, you gave 100 crore. In the second step, you took 25 crore rupees. So how much of your money is there with IMF now? Simple question. How much of your money is there with IMF? How much of your money? 100 crore was there. You have taken 25 crore. 75 crore is there with IMF. Any problems here? How much of your quota is there with IMF? 75 crore. I will call this as IMF holding. I will refer to this as IMF holding. Now have a look at the definition. Have a look at the definition. What is a reserve tranche position? It is the facility that is available to a member country of IMF, wherein up to certain amount of their quota, up to certain amount of their designated quota, they can take in the form of loan. And the beauty of this the beauty of this reserve tranche position is that they do not have to pay any charges to IMF. Some of you will be thinking, what is the utility of, what is the use of it? Even if they take 25 crore rupees from the quota like this, and they are left with 75 crores with IMF, they do not have to pay any charges to IMF. They do not have to abide by any conditions to IMF. That is reserve tranche position. Is the logic okay here? Reserve tranche position is the difference between IMF holding. How much is the IMF holding? 75 crore of a country, and the designated quota. How much is the quota? 100 crore. So 100 crore is the quota, but right now, because you have taken certain amount of money, what is left out with IMF? 75 crore. So the difference between the quota amount and the holdings of IMF, that is called as reserve tranche position. And this is available to every member country. Simple. It is available to every member country. And what is the use of it? Use of it is very simple. You do not have to pay any charges to IMF. You do not have to come under any conditions of IMF. You can simply take that 25% of your quota and use it. Right? Because you are facing certain crisis, you can use this amount of money. Can I go to the next point? Can I go to the next point? This concept is called as a reserve tranche position. Right? And please understand this, why it is important. Because let me connect it to current affairs. Let me connect it to current affairs. Automatically understand why RTP is so relevant. Pakistan wants to take a loan from IMF. Don't you see that IMF is imposing certain conditions on Pakistan? Just apply basic knowledge, current affairs, you will understand. Sri Lanka wants to take a loan from IMF. Is IMF imposing conditions on the Sri Lanka or not? Of course, yes. IMF will impose conditions. Some of you will ask me, sir, why? Why is IMF imposing conditions? My dear, if a country, right, the policies of the government already have led to problems in the economy, IMF wants to give a loan, don't you think they will give the loan with conditions? Right? That's a simple idea. That's a very simple idea. They are giving a loan. Can they simply give a loan and allow you to do whatever you want to do? Of course, no. They can't do that. Right? They will have to impose a certain conditions so that as a government, you will take care of these policies. For example, take Pakistan, you will understand automatically. Take Pakistan. The government of Pakistan has been imposed with lot of conditions. And what has the government of Pakistan done? They have increased taxes. They have increased, right, the charges here and there, so that now they will be able to generate lot of money in the next 1 year. And if they are able to generate lot of money in the next 1 year, stability will improve, economic situation will improve, etc. Right? That is a precise reason, right? I told you, whenever you talk about reserve tranche position, Whenever you talk about it, have a look at this. When done, the member countries do not have to pay any service charges or abide by any conditions imposed by IMF. IMF cannot impose conditions on RTP. That's the reason a member country, if they want money, first they will use RTP. Then they will basically approach IMF to borrow under different options. Under different options. How much is reserve tranche? I told you up to 25%. Up to 25%. Okay. Now, what kind of loans are given by IMF? What kind of loans? This is my sincere suggestion to you. By heart this table. I hope you understand my statement. Please by heart this table. Right? Why? I'll show you a question. Right? Can you see this? Extended credit facility, rapid credit facility, extended fund facility, etc. Let me show you a question and solve it now. Solve it. Have a look at the question. So from where did you get the question? Last year's civil services prelims paper. 2022 prelims paper. Have a look at the question here. Rapid financing instrument, rapid credit facility are related to the provisions of lending by which of the following? Right? Just now I've shown you the table. Just now I've shown. In fact, Government of India, I told you, earlier took loans from IMF, and post 1993, we have not taken any loans from IMF. We have become, in the sense, independent of the borrowing from IMF. And whatever loans we have taken earlier from IMF, by 2000, we have already paid all the loans back. So if you try to search, does Government of India pay back any of the IMF loans today in 2023? Absolutely no. We do not owe IMF any loans right now. We do not owe any payment to the IMF right now. So 2000, we ended up making a payment. 1993, last loan that we took. 2000, right, we repaid the loan. After that, we have not taken loans from IMF. And what kind of loans did we take? We took the loans under extended fund facility. I'll show you the table. Extended fund facility. But anyways, right, this should not be very difficult for you. And this was asked last year in the prelims. That is basically option B, International Monetary Fund. Now have a look at this. Right, the loans which are given by the IMF, we can divide them into two parts. Concessional loans, non-concessional loans. What do you mean by concessional and non-concessional? Simple. When IMF will give a loan, will they charge a rate of interest or not? I hope you understand. When IMF will provide a loan to you, will they charge a rate of interest or not? If they charge a rate of interest, that is called as non-concessional. If they charge a rate of interest, it is called as non-concessional. And if they do not charge any rate of interest, it is called as concessional. Sir, why division like this? Let me ask a very simple question. Imagine your IMF, you are giving loans to two countries, USA and any African country. USA is taking a loan on one side, African country is taking a loan on one side. Do you think you should charge a rate of interest on both of these loans? Think of it. It's a basic question. There is an African country which is taking a loan from IMF because it is facing, let's say, BOP crisis. And USA is also taking a loan from IMF. Should IMF charge a rate of interest on both of these loans? Absolutely no. They should not do that. Right? That's a, USA is not charged. No, my dear, USA is charged. USA loans are charged. Why? Whenever developed countries take loan from IMF, IMF will provide loans on non-concessional basis. They will charge a rate of interest. Whenever, right, very poor countries take a loan from IMF, they will first try to provide under concessional. And if that is not sufficient, they will provide under non-concessional, but with rate of interest now. Okay. There are more than 10 types of loan products. I've given you 6 here. More than sufficient as far as I'm concerned. Please by heart it. right? What are the concessional loans? What are the non-concessional loans? Now, some of you will say, no, sir, I want to buy hard more on this. I want to buy hard more. Then congrats, I've given one more table. Right? I've given one more table here. Right? That is, right, the EFF, Extended Fund Facility, Rapid Financing Instrument, right, Emergency Credit Fund, SCF, RCF, SPA, which are there in the previous slide, by the way. Don't have a heart attack, sir. What is SPA? What is a long form? It is already there. Standby arrangement. So what is EFF? Right? It is already there. Extended Fund Facility. As far as I am concerned, this should be more than sufficient. Should be more than sufficient. But if you want, sir, I want more, right? A dil mange more. I want to buy hard more. Congrats. I've given one more table. Buy hard this as well. Buy this as well. Right? SPA is non-concessional. Repayment has to be done in 3.25 years, which can be extended up to 5 years. Right? EFF, right? Those countries which are emerging and advanced countries. And if you see EFF, is it concessional or non-concessional? Check it. What is EFF? It is non-concessional. And I told you non-concessional is provided to whom? Developed countries, advanced countries, right? Because they have to pay rate of interest. That's a basic idea. Okay. So certain information I have provided, which I personally think is not required. This much level of detailing is not required for UPSC. Which type of a loan was taken by the government in 1993? Extended Fund Facility. Extended Fund Facility. EFF, Extended Fund Facility, was the loan that was taken by government earlier. But again, we do not have any existing outstanding loans with IMF. We have already paid up. We have already paid up, right, all these loans. All which have credit in their name are concessional loans. Okay, that's a trick. You make up your own trick. Done. So these are the different types of loans which are given by IMF. Right? Again, as far as I'm concerned, this should be more than sufficient. But some of you will say, sir, it was there in the newspaper. I want more information. Some more points I've given under this table. Right? More than sufficient. Beyond this, right, my recommendation, don't go beyond this. Okay. Done. Can I go to the next one? In fact, this is the end of the IMF, by the way. Sir, in the table, EFF is returned to be paid in 3 years, but we took 7 years to pay back. Please understand, loans are given. These are extendable. These are extendable. Underline the term, these are extendable. Okay. Fixed amount of duration. Generally they will give, let's say, for 3 years, 3.5 years. But these are extendable again. Okay. Done. So this is a discussion regarding IMF. Last slide for you. Okay, IMF and right India. Right, what are the important points? India is the founding member of IMF. That is, when the IMF was established, India was one of the members. That's it. And by the way, India is a founding member of WTO as well. Right? It is right a part of WTO, founding member of WTO. India currently has a voting right of 2.6% in the IMF. Which country has the highest voting right? USA. USA has the highest voting right, more than 16%. 16%. India has a voting right of 2.6%. India has not taken any financial assistance from IMF since 1993. After that, we have not taken any assistance from IMF. Done? So these are the various points I wanted to discuss in the context of IMF. Now the questions are there, but before that, any questions from your side? Why India maintains gold under Forex? Every central bank will maintain gold. Why? I'll tell you. Value of the gold in a longer duration always goes up. Value of a dollar might change. Value of pound might change. But value of gold always in the long run will increase. And that's the reason I believe I've told you this. I believe I've told you this earlier. Gold is always used to hedge, to escape from inflation. To escape from inflation, we always focus on gold. Why? Gold prices in long term, not short term. Long term, right, the gold prices always increase. Please refer to sir extend fund facility. I told you, no, don't read everything in detail. I can speak 10 hours on these loan products, not required. I've given you whatever is relevant for civil services, right? Extended fund facility, what are the provisions there, right? The SPA, standby arrangement, what are the provisions there? I've given it, more than sufficient. Beyond this, don't do a PhD, right? You're simply making it much more complicated. This level of detailing for GS paper 3 is never required, right? More than this, it is not required. Forex reserves under tranche is a loan taken by India. Please understand this. I told you reverse tranche position. At any point of time, you can get access to this. Do you pay rate of interest on this? No. Do you abide by any conditions of IMF? Absolutely no. Which means at any point of time, I can take 25 crore if my quota is 100 crore. At any point of time, I can simply take 25 crore. So I will simply count it as a part of forex reserves because I can use it at any point of time. Okay. Now, right, let's solve the question. Again, this is an easy question. You don't have to start a poll, etc., etc. It's a very easy question. Recently, which one of the following currencies has been proposed to be added to the basket of IMF's STR? It is renminbi, right? Chinese currency. It is also referred to as renminbi, right? Yuan, renminbi. Just like rupee and paisas in India, yuan and renminbi. Indian rupee is not part of STRs. That should be very clear to you, right? Indian rupee is not part of STR. Okay. Next, with reference to the International Monetary and Financial Committee, consider the following statements. IMFC discusses matters of concern affecting global economy and advises International Monetary Fund on the direction of its work. If you have seen the picture, I've clearly told you. IMFC, these are the members, right? On the left side, there's IMFC, 24 members. India is one of it, right? And other global organizations are observers. We have a development committee, 25 countries are there. India is a member of it. It will also advise. So first statement is correct. The World Bank participates as an observer in the IFC's meetings. Again, this is correct, right? A World Bank is an observer. It is an international organization. They are always allowed to act as observers. So right option for the question is option C, both 1 and 2. Okay. Now I've given you certain descriptive questions. Have a look at this. The nature of economic growth in India in recent times is often described as jobless growth. Do you agree with this view? Give arguments in favor of your answer. This was asked for 15 marks, 250 questions. Okay, 250 questions. If RTP is available for a member country, then that country will take RTP first. Of course, yes. They will always count. They will always take RTP first. And if it's over, then the country will go for another lending. Correct. Right, absolutely correct. That's the reason I told you. If you remember the picture that I shown to you, right, the data for forex reserves in India, whatever is your RTP, by default you will count it as a part of your forex reserves. By default you will take it as a part of forex reserves only. Okay. Next, okay, answer to this question, right? Again, as usual, 3 parts to the answer. 3 parts. 1, introduction. Then there is a main body. Then there is conclusion. What's introduction? What is jobless growth? Please define it. Simple. What is jobless growth? Define it. Jobless growth is a phenomenon in an economy wherein the country achieves a higher growth rate, but the employment growth rate is lagging. Employment growth rate is very, very low. That is referred to as a jobless growth phenomenon. Now, why are we referring to the last 2 decades as a jobless growth phenomenon in India? Right, I've given you the reasons already. Employment elasticity is very low in India. Investments that are done in capital intensive sectors, not labor intensive sectors. Majority of the contribution comes from the services sector, and compared to the others, in services sector, labor generation is lower. Skilled labor availability in case of India is lower. I've given around 6 points there. For sake of reducing, I've written 4 points. You decide which point, how much you want to expand. But my recommendation is, do not write very lengthy introduction, not required. Do not write a very lengthy conclusion. Most of your answer should be concentrating here. Most of your answer should be in the main body, because that is where you are trying to prove that yes, right, yes is basically, right, basically this is why there is a jobless growth. Now what is the conclusion? Right, there's a jobless growth, we have established that. However, the government has been taking measures such as a PMKVY, Startup India, Make in India, etc., wherein we are trying to ensure that lot of jobs are generated, lot of skilling is done in order to address the issue of jobless growth in India. This is how you approach the question like this. Please explain 93% of GDP of India is loan. Right? What is there to explain? Whatever is the value of GDP, the loans that are taken in India, right, that is, let's say, government of India, the debt of a government, that is central plus state, it is equivalent to 93% of GDP. What is there to explain in that? If GDP is 100 crore, the total debt of the center plus state is more than 90 crore rupees. The statement is itself is self-explanatory. Okay. Now, before I go forward, a very important announcement. Many of you are asking, sir, what should I do to remember it? I will give you examples. For example, have a look at this. I've given mind maps. I'll come to that. I'll come to that later. My recommendation is use mind maps. Use the mind maps to revise it easier, right? To make it easier for revision over a period of time. And second one is, feedback form has been shared with all of you, right? There's a feedback form which has been shared with all of you. Please provide your honest feedback. Okay, now before I come to the mind map, right, one more question. What are the salient features of inclusive growth? What are the salient features of inclusive growth? We have discussed it, right? Has India been experiencing such a growth process? Analyze and suggest measures for inclusive growth. Right? What is the introduction? Give the definition of inclusive growth. Define what is inclusive growth. Then what are the salient features of inclusive growth? Reduced poverty, reduced income inequality, reduced regional disparities, reduction in the, let's say, emissions or pollution caused by the country, improvement in the agriculture sector, etc., etc., etc. All these are the salient features of inclusive growth. Now, right, is India experiencing such a growth process? Of course, yes. Right? If you compare, let's say, poverty in India earlier, right, to today, if you compare industrialization earlier, today, agriculture sector performance earlier to today, of course, yes, we have implemented a lot of reforms which are taking us towards inclusive growth. Having said so, even today, there are certain problems in Indian economy, such as poverty numbers are very, very high. Number of people who are poor is very high. Right? You will see a lot of income disparities. You will see regional growth. That is, certain regions are growing at a very good pace. Certain regions are lagging behind, etc. So having said so, now we have come to the conclusion. Having said so, Government of India in the last, let's say, a decade has implemented a lot of reforms which will promote inclusive growth. Right? Do you remember examples? Manrega, right? Production linked incentive, Make in India, Startup India, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, etc., etc., etc. Okay, a lot of these reforms have been implemented in order to protect environment, promote agriculture, promote industrialization, provide skilling, create job opportunities, etc. Right? That is how you basically conclude. And whenever you write conclusion, please remember this. Always end on a positive note. This is my recommendation to all of you. Always end on a positive note. Do not end your answer on a negative note. Do not say nothing, right? Is this ka kuch nahi hoga, right? Everybody is going to go doom, etc., etc. Don't write it. Always end on a positive note. Okay? because you're trying to become a bureaucrat, let's say a civil servant. You should always have a positive outlook. You should say, okay, these are problems. We do agree. Problems are there. How do we address it? This is the reform. Okay, next, justify the need for FDI for the development of Indian economy. Why is there a gap between MOU? MOU means Memorandum of Understanding. Generally, these are signed between the government as well as the companies. MOU signed and actually FDIs. Suggest measures to address it. Right? Introduction. What is FDI? Please define it. At foreign direct investment, what is the definition? Give it. Then in the main body, what is the importance of FDI? There will be two parts here. One is importance. Why agreements are signed but investment is not done? What is the importance of FDI? Investment, technological progress, employment generation, right? Multiplier effect, etc., etc., etc. That's your importance. Having said so, right? Having said so, these are the reasons for lower investment. Right? Agreements are signed, but investment is not done. Why? What is the reason? These are the reasons. Anybody who is disagreeing with the first term, let me know. After discussing infrastructure today morning, anybody who says, sir, we have sufficient infrastructure in India to promote growth, to promote social welfare, to promote exports. Anybody who says we have sufficient infrastructure, absolutely no requirement of new infrastructure. So obviously complementary infrastructure is lagging behind in India. Land acquisition is a problem. Skilled labor availability is also a problem. Getting all the clearances from the ministry or even judicial intervention is a problem. Various government policies may also hinder. Various government policies may become counterproductive. These are some of the reasons why multiple companies will agree to invest, but over a period of time, they will withdraw. They will basically say, no, we will not be investing. So what is the way forward? Government already has implemented single window clearance. Do you remember? Special economic zone, there is a single window clearance. NIMZ, there is a single window clearance. Promotion of skilled labor availability, right? Skill India initiative. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Rozgar Melas, etc., etc., etc. Right? Government is also addressing the issue of tariffs on the imports, reducing tariffs on certain products, or providing incentives to some of these importers so that they will import, manufacture, and sell them in the market. Right? So these are some of the recommendations you can provide. Done? Any doubts? Last question. There's a clear acknowledgement that special economic zones are a tool of industrial development, manufacturing, and exports. Recognizing this potential, the whole instrumentality of special economic zones require augmentation. Augmentation simply means consolidation. You require to implement certain changes here. Discuss the issues which are plaguing the success of special economic zones with respect to taxation, governing laws, as well as administration. Now, I can tell you the answer. Right? Simple. Three parts to the answer. Start with introduction. What is SEZ? Introduce. We have discussed what is SEZ. How SEZs are important. They attract a lot of investment. They create employment. They promote exports, right, etc., etc., etc. That is the importance or relevance of SEZs. What are the problems in the SEZs? Right, we have discussed all the problems. One, tax benefits, tax incentives that have been announced. Now Government of India says, I will withdraw it. Right, Government of India earlier used to provide a lot of incentives under MEIS and SEIS. Those have been withdrawn. Acquiring land has become a problem. Land has been acquired, infrastructure has been developed, but the companies are not able to utilize the resources, etc., etc., etc. There is a whole list of the problems related to SEZs. Focus on it. Right, then way forward. What is the way forward? Way forward is simple. You have Baba Kalani Committee report. Right, Baba Kalani Committee report can be used as a recommendation. Right? You can simply say some of the recommendations right, of Baba Kalyani report or Baba Kalyani committee are like this. Revamp special economic zones into employment economic enclaves. Provide tax incentives, do not withdraw them. Right? Provide now incentives which are connected to investment, employment generation, etc. Right? That is the way forward that you can provide. Done? So these are the questions I wanted to discuss. The last point. I know time is over, 5 minutes are there. I'll finish it now. Last point, mind map. Many of you keep on asking me, sir, it is very difficult for me to remember everything. What should I do? I would recommend, personally, I would recommend in such cases, try to make mind maps like this. Now you don't have to find out what is the definition of a mind map. Don't waste your time. It's simply a tool. What I've done here is simple. I've given you two mind maps. Can everybody see the first mind map? Let me know. Let me know. Can everybody see the first mind map here? The first one is on national income. The second one is on inflation. What I've done is very simple. Whatever current affairs is there, I've put it on the left side. Whatever static information is there, I've put it on the right side. For example, if you talk about national income, we have discussed GDP. In GDP, what points I've put? What is GDP? What is the base year? What are the points in the new methodology? What are the important points in the new methodology? That is a point I've put. After that, what is GNP? Important points I've placed them. What is NDP? What is NNP? What is the per capita income? Right? What is this GDP deflator? Right? What are the issues in the calculation of GDP, etc.? I've placed all of them on one side. And on the other side, right? Many of you are saying, sir, these are very small. Yes, I've crammed. I've basically taken the whole chapter, put it in one slide. So obviously, you will feel a lot of information is there. But on the other hand, I've given you certain current affairs. In fact, this is useless now. This is last year's per capita income. Will you get the latest per capita income? Read the newspapers. Can you get the latest per capita income? 1.72 lakh rupees. 1.72 lakh rupees. That's the latest per capita income. Write it here. Simply write it. Right? So current affairs, put it on one side. Static portion, put it on the other side. Now, simple question to you. First, making this mind map will take time. I know that. Making the mind map will take time. Now, you tell me, once you have made the mind map, how much time will you take to revise the whole chapter? Let me see. Right, once you have made the mind map, how much time do you require to revise this whole chapter of national income aggregate? Hardly, let's say 15 minutes. 15 minutes, maximum 20 minutes. Wherein you are taking care of the static portion, you are taking care of the dynamic portion as well. This would be my recommendation. Is it okay? This would be my recommendation to all of you. Make mind maps for all the chapters for, let's say, investment models, FDI, FPI, PPP, NIMZ. Now under FDI, let's say important points. Under FPI, important points. Right? Under PPP, important points. Under NIMZ, important points. Now whatever is there in the current affairs, put it on the other side. Start revising, start revising, start revising. Right? Hardly, once you make the mind map, hardly you will take 15 minutes to 20 minutes to revise it. And trust me, you will be able to remember these points for very, very longer duration now. Done? Right? I've given you a mind map for two chapters. One is inflation. Second one is national income. Please use it. Please use it. For remaining ones, make the mind maps now. Done? Okay. So that's it from my side. Time is 8 o'clock. My work is also done. I've covered, right? I've covered all the chapters which are relevant. Again, that is very important, which are relevant for civil services. My recommendation to you people, sir, what should I do now? Simple. Use the class PPTs. Use one reference book. Use one reference book, any book. Update current affairs, solve previous year questions. Follow 4 steps. Is it okay? Simple. Use the class PPT, right? Materials given to you. Use the reference material. Keep on updating with current affairs, and finally solve questions. Solve questions as many as possible. That's it. Simple 4-step formula. Okay, so that's it from my side. And all the best to all of you. All the best to all of you. From tomorrow, one more subject will start. A new faculty will come. In the sense, one more faculty will take up the subject. Right? Please attend the sessions. Sharp 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, a new subject will start with all of you. Done? So that's it from my side. Take care. All the best. Have a great week ahead. Okay, take care.